Well, the session has officially ended, thankfully, so we're back to tell you what went down. There's not a lot coming up in the short term, but we might also tell you what's coming up too. He's Andrew, and I'm Nate, and this is the DLC's Policy Corner.
We'll start with the budget, but that could be brief because executive appropriations funded almost nothing on our list. The positive news is that they did appropriate money to move around 250 people off the DSPD waiting list, although it's going to be interesting to see how far that goes without more money for support coordinators or providers. And there was some funding to ensure Medicaid rate parity for youth in foster care and JJYS, but unfortunately, we do not see any funding for local mental health authorities to prevent cuts in an already underfunded mental health system. So now we'll have to keep an eye on what happens with the mental health system.
Also, there were some budget shenanigans on the penultimate night of the session as the governor's budget request for a home court program we mentioned many weeks ago was slipped into a bill and funded at the last minute. We spoke to the House sponsor, and we have many questions about the program that only received $2 million one time for services and around $500,000 for a judge. At this point, all we know is the program allows anyone to ask a judge in Salt Lake County to order a person into services if they have a mental illness and meet other criteria. Once again, rather than investing in upstream, our only answer seems to be bricks and mortar and expanding an already overburdened, under-resourced, and coercive system. As we get more information, we will try to share.
That pretty much sums up the budget. It was a frustrating session for social services as their priority list was largely ignored by executive appropriations. While the voters supported a change to the Utah Constitution a few years ago to allow income tax dollars to be used for children and people with disabilities, along with education, the legislature cut another $170 million from the income tax, giving taxpayers a minimal amount back, while funding very little in social services, but somehow found a way to give another $40 million to private schools and homeschools. So it was a frustrating year for the budget.
And the frustration didn't stop with the budget. We saw most of the bills we were hoping for fail. So we'll have to skip the good bill, bad bill in this episode because it'd be mostly bad news. Some good news is that HB 299 from Representative Clancy did pass. And after it started out as a good and bad bill in and of itself, it actually turned out to be a largely good bill. The bill has some discharge planning requirements for folks exiting inpatient treatment, and it makes some minor tweaks to civil commitment.
There were a couple other bills that did some positive things to help folks in long-term care. SB 229 from Senator Bramble and HB 495 from Representative Lisenby. The first makes some good changes for the Division of Licensing in the Department of Health and Human Services. The bill increases some penalties, clarifies what facilities must be licensed, and increases monitoring. The second adds some abuse reporting requirements and makes it a little easier for residents to put a camera in their rooms if desired.
Well, that pretty much sums up the good news. The major bad news is that Representative Judkin's HB 197, that codified supported decision-making agreements, did not make it through. It came very close, but the Senate adjourned before it got a chance to be heard. We had heard that it would get through, but unfortunately, we just ran out of time. We'll have to work to find a new sponsor for next year as the bad news keeps coming and that Representative Judkins will not return for the 2025 session. The legislature is losing a good representative, and Utahns with disabilities are losing an ally in the legislature.
Speaking of having to find a new sponsor, both of Representative Judkins' bills on special education failed. HB 492 was a bill to create a program to encourage more attorneys to work in special education law, and HB 485 would have created a pilot program to promote inclusion via a co-teaching model. Representative Judkins has said she'll help us work on those over the summer and we'll find new sponsors. For HB 485, the good news is that the policy seems popular, but we'll need some help getting the funding, as that was the issue.
Keeping with the bad news in special education, Representative Ward's HB 347 did pass. This is the bill that requires students to be in the least restrictive environment when it's not significantly disruptive in an ongoing fashion, won't lead to serious bodily injury of others, and won't allow for repeated sexual harassment or assault. The bill clearly conflicts with protections in federal special education law, and we believe it would lead to a lot of litigation. So we'll also be sending a veto letter to the governor on this one.
Quickly, a few others. HB 544 from Representative Abbott, which clarified some rights for folks with mental illness in inpatient settings, didn't pass due to a small fiscal note of $60,000 for peers. We'll continue to work on that one for next year.
Two good bills for the waiting list failed. HB 393 from Representative Daley Provost that created a dedicated funding source, and HB 324 from Representative Ballard that would have given folks on the list access to Medicaid.
Well, we don't want to end on a bad note. So one last bit of good news is that HB 463 from Representative Brammer didn't go through. This was the bad Medicaid bill that would have led to devastating cuts. Unfortunately, the bill could come back for study in the interim, but we'll keep you posted.
Speaking of interim, Andrew and I are hoping to do a few Policy Corner episodes throughout the rest of the year to let you know what is happening with interim and other policy items we're working on. So keep an eye on our website, disabilitylawcenter.org/issue/public-policy, and our social media for those updates.
We did our best to keep this short and let you know what went down. But as Nate mentioned, the website where you can also find our final bill and budget trackers for where all 65 bills and 63 budget items we were following ended up. As always, thanks to all of you for watching, and keep an eye out for more episodes in the coming months. And with that, Nate, I will take one final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
That's non-debatable, so we're done.